everybody. Welcome, welcome. Wednesday night history lesson. What's up? How's it going? How's the sound? Sound good? Music too loud? Am I too loud? I'm always loud, I feel. Mr. Hair! What's up, everybody? Mad Lad, hello, welcome in. Moondog, welcome, welcome. Mr. Hair. Mr. Bald. Who else we got out here? Sacred Coral, of course. My beloved mod, thank you, as always. As well as Mad Lad. Both beloved mods on the channel. They love you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, how do I sound? Am I good? Sounds fine? Good. That's awesome. That's what I like to hear. So, we have one of my favorite little topics that we're going to cover today. It is unironically one of the most interesting, I think one of the most interesting historical slash fictional slash mythological lessons that somebody can learn about. It literally explains the rise and fall of empires, the determining of kings and emperors, death, destruction of empires, even the saving of Christianity, I would argue. And ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be talking this evening about the Spear of Destiny, also known more formally as the Lance of Longinus or the Holy Lance. Now, my Europeans out there might know about this, or if you're a historical aficionado or lover like me, you might know about this lance a little bit, just because of how important it is to the ascent of kings, specifically Charlemagne, Frederick Barbarossa, Emperor Constantine of Rome. These are all historical figures we're going to talk about today, but I am so excited to talk about this. I think this PowerPoint might be one of my better ones. I tried to change the size up. I've written down notes. The Spear of Longinus from Evangelion. That's correct. That's why a lot of people say that Evangelion took a lot of Christian influence. That and there's other things, obviously, but the Lance of Longinus is one of them. And it's because of how important it is to Christians, but also how important it is to Christian history as well. So it's a real thing, and it is also caped in a lot of mystery. It's caped in, like I said, a lot of stories and legends and mythology, just a whole bunch of stuff. It's very interesting to go over, I think. So if you guys are excited about tonight as much as I am super duper ready for the presentation. Wanted to check in with everybody. How's everybody's week going? I know it's Wednesday, hump day. Tomorrow's my last day of work. I work 10s all week, so I am ready to be off for the weekend. Gonna be doing some stuff over the weekend with a buddy. I think I'm gonna go see the new Deadpool Wolverine movie. Fix up some cosplay stuff, and obviously stream on Saturday for you guys. But other than that, how's everybody's night going? You guys doing good? What was your week's like? Lots of work? Doing fine, Mad Lad? Munchy Cat? Very nice. Ooh. I had to get some water before I started because I have been chugging water this week, which is awesome. Make sure you guys stay hydrated out there. Pretty good. Okay, that's good. Awesome. I'm glad to hear it. Well, here's what I'm going to do. As always, I am going to show a little video before we get started with our presentation, just so you guys get a little bit of info on it. And then we will show the presentation and go over that. And today, I think I might stream a little bit extra. Just chatting, perhaps. I'm not really sure what I'm gonna do, but yeah, I think I'm gonna do something else. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll do a longer stream today. Who knows? Just depends on how I feel. I feel bad for not streaming for the week, and then last weekend we had a normal stream. So, but anyways, my week was mostly chilling as always. I did some work recently though. That's awesome. Love to see it. Love to be out here working. Chill maxing, says Mr. Hare. We love chill maxing as well. It's been raining a lot here, so my chill maxing has been me at work listening to Spotify and being interrupted by my teammates constantly calling me on my phone and my computer, telling me that I need to join a meeting or whatever, and then subsequently talking to me for 5 minutes, and then I have to unplug my headset and plug it back into my regular computer so I can continue listening to Spotify, because I can't do it on my work computer. But I digress. Anyways, let's get to the video that I wanted to show you guys. It was a History Channel video I wanted to show, but I'm not sure if this is actually the one. That's an ad. Also, I'm not showing anything, I know. I'm just looking at the video for right now. Let's see. Hang on one second, let me make sure this is the right one.
While the Old Testament of the Bible describes numerous holy relics, including the menorah.
Okay, yeah, this is the one. So this is from a show called The Unexplained. It's kind of out there, but obviously when we're talking about something like this Spear of Destiny or the Lance of Longinus, it's a very heavily, not just historical, but also very heavily influenced by Christianity and mythology, folklore and stuff like that. So it depends on how you look at Christian mythos, I guess, or I guess Christian history, whichever one you want to call it, not to be offensive to anyone. But it's a important thing to look at, but The Unexplained's a little bit out there. I do enjoy watching it every once in a while. It's kind of like junk food for your mind, but you can't consume junk food all the time, right? But we're going to watch this video real quick, so I'm going to put it up real quick here. Make sure, do I have that? Whoop, wrong one. I think it's window capture. And then, where did it go? No, not that one. Is it this one? Well, it's not that one either. That's my stream. Hold up. Hold up. I got this, I promise. I know what I'm doing. I'm very smart, I promise. Let's see. Why is it not letting me... I don't know why it's not letting me switch to just this one, but okay. Weird. Let's see. Sorry guys. Technical difficulties as always on the maxforgevt channel. Let's see if I can do this. Bring that over here. And then we will do a little shuffling around of my browsers. And then boom. Well, that's that. There we go. Okay. Boom. Got that one. And then we go and we pull this out and put that up. And now we check it again. Weird. Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay, sweet. Got it now. Okay, I'm going to turn this back on, and we will be watching a little video real quick. So I'm going to mute the music. Well, I guess pause the music. And we will watch The Unexplained. Spear of Destiny has divine powers. So yeah, a little bit weird of a video for you guys. Obviously, like I said, the Unexplained is a bit of a different shift from what's normally, I guess, shown. It's a little bit out there, but it is a cool, like, what do you, I guess kind of like how Mad Lad just said, it's like a little bit of a, like, how do you say it? Like a Assassin's Creed style, like, thing, you know, like, it sounds like the apple of Eden or something like that, but it's like a very interesting relic still. I find it fascinating to go over like all the presumed legends and things that happen with it. And as you saw there, it has a huge long history from all the way from the death of Christ up until now. So I just like thinking about like, what happened with this spear. Is it real? Is it the same one that we see at the Hofburg Palace in Vienna? If it's not, what happened to the real one? Was the real one ever found, or was it just a, like how do you say it? Like a fake, or a like, whatever, right? Because we don't really know, and that's the entire, I guess, point of this is it's historical, but I like going over it because I want to do something a little bit out of the norm, so to speak. So that was why I chose this. And let me there's one more video I want to show you guys, so let me pull it up real quick. Is it this one? No, that's not the right one. Hang on one second. Sorry about that. Where is it? Oh, goodness. There was like a 2-minute video I wanted to show you guys. It was about the Spear of Destiny, but I cannot find it for me. Oh, it's right here. Here it is. Found it. It's by the Smithsonian Channel. So this does cover Adolf Hitler and Nazis' obsessions with this weapon. So just be forewarned, little trigger warning for anybody who cares. But this one is kind of fascinating as well. So let me turn this back on, and we'll watch this. Oh, let me turn myself a little smaller. Boom.
It's a matter of record that Nazi forces took possession of all the treasures of the museum, including the spear. They were placed in safekeeping in an underground bunker. But a number of conspiracy theorists writing on the subject of the Nazis and the occult go much further. The story goes that Hitler was desperate to make the spear his own.
Hitler is said to have had a complete obsession with the spear, made a beeline for the Kunsthistorische Museum when the Anschluss allowed him to come in and take Vienna. One of the first things he did was to head to the museum and take possession of the spear.
And there's this very powerful sense that the lance is absolutely fundamental to Hitler's yearning for power.
There is an urban myth that at the end of the war, at the very moment when the spear fell back into Allied hands, Hitler, 300 miles away in Berlin, took his own life.
Some of this stuff is taken very seriously by those who believe that the spear does indeed have magic powers and was indeed used by the Nazis as some kind of weapon.
The problem is, it's certainly false.
It's, of course, absolute nonsense.
We know that the spear was only recovered in January 1946, months after Hitler's death.
A legend was created that this Holy Lance was kind of a symbol, was kind of a relic for Hitler himself. But what was created only later on is pure legend.
The Hitler story was clearly inspired by that of Charlemagne. What both tales prove is that the spear does at least possess a power to capture the imagination and generate myth.
Thanks, Smithsonian Channel. You're always the greatest. We love you. Mwah. Kiss, kiss. Interesting little thing. I'm just gonna be upfront with you guys. I don't think it's like some crazy over the top like magic thing. I'm just gonna be very, very clear about that. I don't want anybody to be like, "Oh my God, he believes in magic. He thinks this is like a real thing." I don't think it's an actual like magic thing. I do think that the history and the mythology behind it. Yeah, no, hot take, magic not real, right? You would be surprised. You would really be surprised, especially some of the things I hear from people who are supposed historians. Um, um, but I want to just be upfront with you guys. I don't think that. I just want that to be made perfectly clear. That is not something that I believe. So, just in case, anyone thinks I'm uh, a magic believer, then there you go. I think I've squashed the magic allegations. All right, so let me just get this PowerPoint pulled up. Okay. Um. All right, so let me make sure I got this pulled up. Santa Claus is real? Oh, dude. Did somebody not tell you? Of course he's real. Of course Santa Claus is real. What am I saying? Of course Santa Claus is real. Come on, guys. We love Santa. We love Santa, right? I love Santa. Santa Claus isn't real, guys. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to tell you. So, there's an interesting little book that somebody wrote. It's by a guy named Trevor Ravenscroft. It's called The Spear of Destiny. The occult the Spear of Destiny, the occult power behind the spear which pierced the side of Christ, and how Hitler inverted the force in a bid to conquer the world, which is a very interesting title for a book. It's a very long title for a book. But if you're interested after we get done with our presentation, go check that out, because I think it's quite interesting. So it's a good little read, I think. I didn't get to read it beforehand. I did pick it up though, because I did find it I found it during my research for this. So if you really, really, really want to get some better knowledge on the subject, please go check that out afterwards. I always encourage outside reading and learning, and it's good to fact check me or fact check anyone who's trying to teach you any history, because we might be wrong. Some of the sources that people use are wrong, and people just don't check it. And I'd rather be called out for being wrong than actually teach somebody something and then they don't try to push back on it. So all about that here. Well, let's see. All right, we are going to pull this up. Need to make sure that I got the right picture for this last one, and then we are going to get pulled up, ladies and gentlemen. All right, boom. So there we go. Okay, all right. I think I got it, so we are going to go ahead and put on the other overlay real quick to the presentation. Only truth enjoyers here. Exactly, dude. If you're not a truth enjoyer, honestly, dude, like, this is what I don't like about some people who try to teach history lessons. And I have a problem with it for certain YouTubers as well. there are certain YouTubers who will literally go out of their way to like play like make a video, right? And they'll put evidence into the video, or they don't even put evidence or any sources to support their things that they're making. So their entire video consists of, so what's the source? My crack pipe, my brain, my imagination. God told me this was it. Like this, literally. Like, I'm sure that they did actually do research for some of these, but it does annoy me whenever people do quote unquote research and then they don't put sources for it, which is why I added in the sources tab the last time that we did our presentation. So this is like, it's not that I don't like their videos, because I do. I think history is very important. And I think it's important to be very entertaining for this. But the thing that really irks me, I guess, is the just the lack of sources in general that people for some reason just cannot put into their stuff. I don't understand why, but anyways. Okay. And let me make sure I got the slideshow from beginning. Okay, cool. All right, and I am going to... Oh, it's already up. Perfect. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, The Spear of Destiny by Max Forge. All right, so who, what, when, where, and why? So what is the Spear of Destiny? So it's also known as the Lance of Longinus, or the Holy Lance. And it is the spear that was stabbed into Jesus' side. So if you don't know the historical context for this or the biblical context for this, right, it's okay. Let me inform you. Whenever Jesus was crucified, which means he was put up on the cross. He had his nails in his hands, he had the nails in the feet, and then he had the crown of thorns. After he died on the cross, he was said to have been checked to make sure he is dead by a Roman soldier. Now, there's no name given to this Roman soldier until later on. So the soldier goes up, he has a spear, he's on horseback. Sometimes he's on horseback, sometimes he's not. Just depends on which source you read. And he goes up and he stabs it into the rib and the side of Jesus. Okay? And then whenever Jesus returns, like one of the big things after he comes back in the Bible is he has a big scar in the side. Obviously, he has his hands and his feet and the cuts on his forehead from the crown of thorns. But he also has a spear stabbed into his side. And there's a very historical, or there's a very well-known Renaissance painting of Jesus showing off his cut or stab wound to his disciples. I can't remember what the name of it is, but that's what the spear is. When and where was the lance used, and how did it become significant? So, it was used during Jesus' crucifixion, as I said. And what made it so significant? It was used at the crucifixion, like I just said. But what made it really significant was it was coated in the blood of Christ. Now, depending on if you know anything about Catholic history, or how Catholics do relics, or how Christians have done relics throughout the era, anytime there is a holy person, so that could be, I say a holy person, like a saint or a martyr of some sort, so that could be like a pope, or a very well-known figure in Catholic like sainthood, someone like this. If they have any of their blood or an item that they used or clothing that they wear or anything like that on an object, that object is inherently sanctified and becomes a holy relic. So after the Pope in the 70s, I think it was John Paul II, got shot, or or John Paul, I can't remember if it's John Paul or someone else, but after he got shot, there is stories of people running and using tissues and like things to stop him from bleeding, and those tissues and stuff, because it touched a pope's blood, became a holy relic. And because he was sanctified, it's a very important artifact in Catholic, not scripture, but Catholic religion. So the things like these relics become very, very important to specifically Christians in the early days, because everyone was a Catholic essentially, right? Or a Catholic, quote unquote. So essentially, it's holy relic, right? It becomes a holy relic. It stabbed Jesus in the side, and it became a holy relic. Now, why did the blood actually matter, and what makes it so important that the spear becomes a relic and becomes something that is used as the spear of destiny later on? Well, whenever the guy who stabbed Jesus, this is a story that comes in later, whenever he stabbed the side of Jesus, some of the blood from the lance got into his hand, and the man was said to have been blind. That's why he was on this duty. It was because he just that was the only thing he could do. So he essentially stabs Jesus in the side, right? And he takes the spear out. He's like touches it or whatever, and he's blind. He has blood on his hand from it, and he wipes his hand across his eyes to clear them of sweat or whatever. And supposedly, according to legend, the man then becomes able to see. And that night, after he's able to see for the first time, there is a giant astronomical, like meteorological event that happens, and he is then turned into a Christian because he realizes that the man he just stabbed was the man who died for our sins, right? So that's according to the story that is told later on, and we'll touch a little bit on that whenever we talk about this guy, because he's unnamed as of now. As of right after the crucifixion, he does not have a name in our history for the moment. So, next slide. More of the who, what, when, where, and why. So who has owned the spear, and why is it important? So, as we talked about, it's called the Lance of Longinus, which is one of its other names. So the Saint Longinus that it comes from, that's his name. That is the man, that's the name he's essentially given later on in Christian history. That's who stabs Jesus in the side. It's Longinus. Okay? Other people who are very important to owning this: Emperor Constantine, who is a Roman emperor, one of the last great Roman emperors. Attila the Hun, who is very, very important for one of the massive fall that happens thereafter of Rome. Charlemagne, who unites the Holy Roman Empire, and then Frederick Barbarossa, who expands the Holy Roman Empire to an even greater extent. And we'll touch on each of these guys. So, St. Longinus. So, he was named St. Longinus, right? So, he was an unnamed Roman soldier, and he was the original owner of the spear. Obviously, we just talked about he stabbed Jesus in the side. But his name was given to him by the Roman Catholic Church later on. And it's presumed that the name actually came from the Latinized version of the Greek word for lance, which is, I think, longi, or something of that effect. And that's from the apocryphal Gospel of Nicodemus. So if you haven't read that, it's important. But he wasn't actually even originally a saint. In early Christian texts, there was I forget what the term is, but it's essentially like something that's supposed to be historically accurate, but it's actually determined later that's actually false. But it's called a letter of Herod to Pilate, and it's a letter written from Herod to Pontius Pilate, who is the man who condemned Jesus to death. And it's claimed that he was that Longinus was actually originally it was claimed that he was condemned to a cave where every night a lion came and mauled him until dawn, and then his body would be healed back to normal at dawn, and then the lion would leave, and then he would come back the next night, and it would continue in a very rough pattern until he died. But that was from, like I said, a fake text. So the other story about Longinus that happens later on, and this is according to Sabine Baring-Gould, who is a biblical biblical historian, from what I understand. Longinus was only named around the time Patriarch Germanus, who is a Eastern Orthodox patriarch, which is like a very important religious figure in the Eastern Orthodox Church. But he actually is not named until around the time of Patriarch Germanus in 715 AD. And there's actually no reliable authority for the acts and martyrdom of the saint, which is why he's very interesting as to why he's called Saint Longinus, because they don't really have any like actual authority in history that's based off of it, but a lot of people still claim him as a saint. And as we talked about before, you know, he was supposedly blind, but after accidentally touching his eyes with Christ's blood, was able to see again, and he converted to Christianity after witnessing like this major meteorological phenomena after the crucifixion of Christ. And that version, that story, didn't actually come about until around, I think, 1000 AD from what I was studying. So that's an interesting little thing about Longinus. There's actually not a lot known about him aside from him being the person who stabbed Jesus on the side. But as we know, we don't even know what his actual real name was. So they just kind of named him Longinus off of the spear, which is where we get the name for, Lance of Longinus, and then later on the Spear of Destiny. So at this time, it's called the Lance of Longinus, right? So then we go forward in time. The spear's lost in history, right? So hundreds of years pass. The Roman Empire is still around. It controls most of the territory still. And there gets to be this point in history where the Eastern and Western Roman Empires, so the West being like the Italian, German, French, Spanish, and like British side of the empire, and then the other side being Turkey, the Balkans, Greece, and like a little bit of like Ukraine. So they're both the Roman Empire still. It's just there's the Western and the Eastern Roman Empire, and these two still trade between each other. They still have similar cultures and everything, but they're entirely headed by different people. So there's two different emperors, and sometimes the emperors actually share in like a triumvirate, or they share in like a dual head like hegemony type of thing. And the guy who ends that and kind of reestablishes the Eastern and Western Roman Empire into one Roman Empire is Constantine, which is why he's called the Great. So Emperor Constantine the Great, he was the first Christian Roman emperor, and he actually became a Christian and converted a little bit into his adulthood. So he's widely regarded as one of the greatest Roman emperors. He played a pivotal role in ending religious persecution in Roman territories, and specifically for Christians, because he was one himself. He essentially, through a series of marriages and war, so establishing centralized areas, he essentially founded Constantinople because it was the bridge between Turkey and Asia, like Persia as it was known back then, or the Levant, whichever one you want to call. It was the bridge between that part and Europe. So he established Constantinople as like his head of where he was going to be at. He fights a war against the Western Emperor, whose name is Maxentius. And Maxentius puts up a hard fight, gets defeated, and he takes over back rule of original Rome, so like Italy territory. And his co-ruler at the time was Licinius. and he beats Licinius in a civil war while wielding the Lance of Longinus. Now, where did he get the Lance of Longinus? Well, his mother is named Helena. So Helena is a interesting lady. She gives birth to Constantine. His father was Flavius, who was the previous Roman emperor. Flavius, you might recall from your high school history. They give birth to Constantine, and Helena goes on this pilgrimage, right? And she actually becomes a Christian too during the pilgrimage, and that's how she kind of passes it on to her son. That's why he ends up converting. But he goes on a pilgrimage or she goes onto a pilgrimage rather, to the Holy Land. Somewhere around Jerusalem, they think, but they don't really know exactly where she went. She comes back, and she has this spear with her. And the spear, as she tells it, was given to her by the people in the area because they knew how important she was and how close she was to the emperor, being his mother, obviously. And they say, hey, give this to your son. This is the lance that stabbed the side of our Messiah, right? This spear is going to lead him into great things. This is going to lead to him becoming the greatest emperor that Rome has ever known. And essentially he goes down this whole long list of things that are going to happen. And she's like, well, hell yeah, of course I'm going to do that. I'm converting. I'm already a convert to Christianity. I'm going to come back. I'm going to give this to my son. And I'm going to tell him the ways of Christ, right? So she comes back. She gives it to him. And he converts, right? So while he's fighting the Eastern and Western Roman empires, he actually is wielding the Lance of Longinus. And he's using it during battles. And so it becomes known as the Spear of Destiny because it was claimed that he was destined to become the Roman emperor over every part of Rome. So that's where the Spear of Destiny name gets its original title from. So after that, he heavily believed in the power of the spear, and he actually held it whenever he called this thing called the Council of Nicaea. And the Council of Nicaea is essentially a thing that said, hey, look, I'm a Christian. My mother's a Christian. We have a lot of Christians in our kingdom right now, in our empire. I want to end religious persecution, but I want to officially establish Christianity as the official religion of Rome. I want to do out with all the old gods. How do I go about doing this? And he essentially talks to very wise counselors at Nicaea, which is in, I believe, Greece or Western Turkey. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. And he ends up making Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire that is now rejoined together. Additionally, I'm going to go back just really quickly. I don't know if I have the picture of it. I don't think I do. So, okay. So, the spear itself, we'll show you in a minute. He ends up also receiving nails that are said to have been from Christ's crucifixion. So, Jesus' crucifixion, right? Which are the nails that were driven through his hand and his feet. So he had one of those nails from the crucifixion actually enshrined in the top portion of the spear. So it's like a little casing, and if you look at the picture of it, which I think we'll probably get to it later on, but it's actually wrapped in a wire, and in the middle there's a big nail right in the middle of it, and that is what that means. So to enshrine it means to literally place it in the middle of something. So it's seated right there in the middle of his spear. And anyways, Constantine, one of the greatest Roman empires, lives, founds what is the new unified Roman Empire, brings about a new golden age for Rome. Well, not a golden age, but a new high age for Rome. And then he ends up passing away. Well, here it is. So this is where it's seated. This is I think a replica, not the original. But if you see right here, the black part in the middle, that's where it's enshrined at, or encased. So this is supposedly why these wires are here, because it's the actual nail from the cross. So he wanted to make sure that's preserved inside of there. And actually, funnily enough, they still use the spear in battle going forward, which is insane to me. But holy relics like that were very important to people back in the day. So it makes sense, but also doesn't, because if you lose the spear, you also lose one of the nails of the cross. But anyways, I digress. So a golden sleeve is later added by another emperor, and I don't really know who. But this golden spear is actually, the replica is actually very close to what the quote unquote real one looks like, and we'll say why. We'll talk about that in a moment. But there's a inscription on it, which you can't see on here because I don't think they actually wrote it, but it says Lancia et clavus Domini, which means the lance and nail of the Lord. So, and the spear and its alleged power was kind of passed down from emperor to emperor following this, and it remained with the Roman emperors until Attila the Hun came into its possession, which we'll touch on in our next topic, or our next slide. And in fact, funnily enough, the good news about this is that it was actually saved, because there was this, essentially after Constantine, not the Holy Roman Empire, but the Roman Empire started falling apart again very quickly, just because of how vast the empire was. Even though Constantine consolidated a lot of the power in Constantinople, Rome still had a lot of power, but they didn't have a lot of protection, because obviously the East had a lot of power, so they're going to transfer a lot of that, their units, their soldiers, or whatever, outside. You're also getting attacked by the Ostrogoths and Visigoths, the Vandals, the Huns, which we'll talk about in our next slide, and all these Germanic and barbarian tribes start attacking Rome and starts essentially disintegrating the borders of Rome. And I mean, there's massive hordes of people, like tens of thousands of troops, that just kind of start coming out of the forest and start pushing the Romans further and further back into their normal original territories. And it kind of split up the empires again, because the East didn't have to deal with anything except for in the Balkans and the occasional, like, maybe raid in the East. But other than that, there wasn't much for the East to worry about aside from its Western counterpart. So Rome gets sacked twice. First time is in 410 AD, which I believe is by the Vandals. And then the next time is 455, which is by the Goths. And both of those times, the Roman Catholic Church is instrumental in saving very, very, very important documents that if we did not have them today, we would have lost nearly all of our history from probably about not 2000, probably 500 AD until around the time that the sacking of Rome occurred. So we would have been out about 500, 600 years of history had they not saved it. And thank God, because one of the things that they saved was the spear. Not only the spear, but other holy relics, the nails of Christ, the shroud of Turin, some other things that are very, very important to Christians as a whole, specifically Catholic Christians, and also historical texts that without which we would not have been able to translate the Bible fully, which would have been a whole other mess. So that is what happens then. So next slide, Attila the Hun. So if you don't know who Mr. Attila the Hun is, he is the leader of the Huns, which is a group of Germanic or steppe tribe barbarians. He was known as the Scourge of God because of how heavily he attacked the Roman Empire, who was now Christian, obviously. He united barbarian tribes together to defeat the Roman Empire. So, and we're talking about both the East and the Western Roman empires here. He was fighting both of them. There were other tribes around. Obviously, the Vandals and the Goths sacking Rome twice is very important. But not only just that, but whenever he merges all these, he merges the Goths together with the Vandals, with the Utes, with the Huns, right? And all of these, and the Gauls. And he marches these tribes into the Balkans, and he starts attacking the Eastern Roman Empire. And so they have to fight back against him, right? And then he gains some land, but he can never really break through to the Byzantine Empire. But I think before this, though, he invades Italy. And he's killing and sacking and plundering and looting everything on his way to Rome. So what ends up happening is whenever he gets outside of Rome, right, his troops have marched a lot since then. So there's a few different accounts of what actually happens, but he didn't conquer Rome, right? That's the main point. So I just want to go over a few of these. The biggest one, which people believe occurred, is that it was diplomatic intervention by Pope Leo I, who is now known as Saint Leo the Great. And according to historical accounts, Pope Leo and other envoys met with Attila and persuaded him to spare Rome. They don't have exact details of the negotiation, but it's believed that Leo's presence and persuasive arguments played a huge role in persuading him not to. From what I gather, and this is according to, we're obviously going over the spear. From what I gather, he said that he would give him a lot of gold and a lot of loot. And he said that he would give him a spear that was known to have been held by great emperors before for Rome. And it was essentially all but assured that he would conquer more land and become a great ruler if he spared Rome. So they give him the spear in this account. There are other accounts that suggest that Attila was actually influenced by divine visions of, or maybe omens. Some legends claim that Attila was deterred from attacking Rome after a vision of St. Peter and St. Paul, which obviously is part of the Christian narrative to explain why the city kind of miraculously escaped. And another huge factor was supposedly discontent among his troops. Obviously, he's banding together a bunch of tribes with different visions and different beliefs, different religious backgrounds, tons and tons and tons of different, just ethics, morals, all these other things that they obviously don't share. Okay? So that's another big one. But we don't really know what exactly happened. We just know that Rome was spared, and that's the important part, right? That would have been the third sacking and probably the final sacking of Rome. So they give him the lance. So somehow, either way, he comes across the possession of the lance, at least from what stories tell. He had apparently heard rumors of the power of the spear before this, which is why he talked about it with Pope Leo, supposedly. And so he was given the spear and said, okay, leave Rome alone, right? So what ends up happening, right, he goes into the Balkans and he starts fighting, and he ends up not really doing super well. Like, he conquers some land, but he doesn't really do a whole lot with it, right? So he rides back to Rome. He rides back to Rome after fighting in the Balkans, right? And he takes the spear and he raises it above his head and he throws it on the ground, and he essentially shouts to the city. This is according to the legend, right? He essentially says, "Take back your holy lance. It is of no use to me, since I know not him who made it holy." And he rides off with his army. So if you don't know the story of Attila, after Attila rides out, he kind of gets a little bit, I can't remember if it's ill, or if he gets stabbed and then gets ill, but he essentially tries to plan more invasions against Rome. He gets sick, supposedly, and then dies shortly after giving back the lance to the Romans. I mean, very quickly. Like, maybe, I don't even think it was a full year. So, many such cases, exactly. Going to the Balkans, classic mistake, indeed. So, there was this other rumor that now becomes associated, or another legend that becomes associated with the lance, is that it can only be or used and equipped by Christian rulers, right? So if you're not a Christian ruler, it doesn't help you out, but it still has the curse, which now becomes attributed because of Attila dropping it, and then some later possessors of it dropping dead after not having the spear. If you give away the spear, if you throw it on the ground, if you drop it, or if it gets stolen, you're essentially signing yourself up for death, right? You're essentially going to assuredly die within the next year. So that's how Attila ends up going. He is defeated shortly thereafter, and he dies, okay? So, this is where the Dark Ages begin. There's a ton of important events that happen after Attila. And the spear is just passed down between, pardon me. The spear is essentially passed down between each of these rulers and empires and all their offspring. So any ruler or country that takes over between these times, just know that they had the spear and that's where the spear went after. So it goes like this. The Western Roman Empire officially falls with the death of the deposition of the last Roman emperor, which is Romulus Augustulus. He was deposed by a Germanic chieftain named Odoacer, or Odoacer. I think it's Odoacer. And Odoacer, essentially, whenever he makes him give up the throne, it marks the end of Roman rule in the West. This is the fall of Rome. Rome is done, right? No more Rome, or at least in the West. Eastern Roman Empire has now become the Byzantine Empire, and we'll talk about them here in just a second. So this is where we get the beginning of the medieval Europe period, or the Dark Ages. Dark Ages is a very weird term to me because technically a Dark Ages is just a associated term to describe like periods of history between like 1066 and the fall of Rome, or the fall of Rome and then 1066, which I don't really click with because there's a lot of history and it wasn't all dark, but that's a discussion for another time. So essentially, Odoacer establishes himself as the ruler of Italy after he overthrows Rome. And this happens in 476. He declares himself king of Italy, and his rule is not very long. It's only about 17 or so years. And that's when Theodoric the Great comes about. So Theodoric the Great in 493, he is the king of the Ostrogoths, which is, if you remember, they're one of the groups that sacked Rome. I can't remember if it was the Visigoths or the Ostrogoths that sacked Rome the second time. I think it was the Visigoths. The Ostrogoths are another group. They're essentially from the same lineage, but they split off somehow. So the Ostrogoth kingdom comes in, and they fight Odoacer and the Germanic tribes. So they end up overthrowing him. And his rule actually brings quite a bit of stability and cultural continuity in the region for a bit. Theodoric the Great is actually really well known in Germany specifically. He's one of German folk heroes. Very, very interesting guy. I actually might do a video on him sometime in the future, but he ends up leading Italy and the Ostrogoth kingdom from 493 until 526 AD, whenever he passes away, and it's given down to his son. After Theodoric dies and his son takes over, shortly thereafter, I believe 9 years after he assumes the throne, the Byzantine Empire comes back under Emperor Justinian I, who is very well known and if you know your Byzantine history, he is very important to Byzantine early history. He essentially wants to reclaim Rome, and he starts fighting a lot of wars because of it, and he's very, very successful in it. So Theodoric has the Spear of Destiny at this point. Odoacer had it before him, now Theodoric, and now Theodoric's son has it. Important to note, Odoacer, Theodoric the Great, and his son, none of them are Christians. They're all pagans. Emperor Justinian, however, is a Christian, and he actually seeks to reclaim the Western Roman territories, and he ends up fighting a war, which is called the Gothic Wars, which are him fighting against the Ostro and Visigoths to reclaim parts of the Balkans and Italy, and then ends up taking the rest of Italy later on. That is from 535 to 554 AD, when he ends up having the he ends up taking it back, right? 554. And so it becomes Byzantine rule. He reobtains the Spear of Destiny in 554, or somewhere around that time, probably a little bit before if I had to guess. And he actually uses it and takes it back to Constantinople and recrowns himself Empire of Rome, or Emperor of Rome. And essentially it leads to a very stable time of Byzantine rule in Italy for about 14 years. And so we've had between 475 and 554 now, about 70 years, we've had 4 different rulers of this territory. It was the Romans, and then the Germans, and then the Ostrogoths, and now back to the Romans, or the Byzantines as they're called. After the Byzantines come back, however, in 568, I believe Justinian dies around this time as well. But in 568, the Lombards invade Italy, and the Lombards are like southern France, like they're Franks technically, but they're like a weird mix of like it's like kind of like Alpine people, I guess, like southern France, northern Italy, what we now know as Switzerland, Germans, like that whole region down there. They kind of make this really strong kingdom with remnants from all these other nations, specifically the Lombards and the Saxons, I believe. And they become like a bigger group of people. So they're led by a king, and I thought I wrote his name down somewhere through here. I guess I didn't. Shoot. Oh, well. They're led by this very strong king. Apologize for not having his name in here. That's my oversight. And he ends up conquering that land very quickly. They push the Byzantines out. The Byzantines can't control it. They've gone back to a new emperor who's weaker, and their forces are just not strong enough. They don't have good enough generals. They don't have enough money. It's too hard to hold Rome. There's too many German tribes attacking them in the Balkans. They have to retreat. So they end up retreating, and that is the end of the Byzantine rule of Rome. And it becomes the start of the Lombard Kingdom, and they control significant parts of Italy, and they control that from 568 until 774. Now, the Byzantines are still a little bit in Italy, specifically, I believe, in Sicily. They own parts of southern Italy, but that's it. They don't own any major parts of Italy as we know it today. Sicily's obviously very important, don't get me wrong, but they don't own Rome. They don't own that northern part, Tuscany and all these other areas. Or not Tuscany, Tyrol and some of these other areas of like Austria, northern Italy, which are where a lot of the power for that Roman Empire were. So the king comes in possession of the spear again, and no one really challenges this leader, and he essentially kind of continues the tradition of not being a Christian ruler who owns the spear, but because he's not attacked, he's not really defeated by anyone. And he keeps passing it down to his son and his son and then his son and then his son until 774, which is when we get to our next lad. He is Charlemagne, who is the first Holy Roman Emperor. He is also the king of the Franks. He is, along with his brother, I think his name was Carloman, that's Carloman, was co-king of the Franks. And then after his brother's death, he kind of expanded his control. But 774, Charlemagne, who is now king of the Franks, he defeats the Lombards and incorporates their land into his realm. And the Lombards and the Saxons are all these people that I was talking to you about that kind of come together. And he retrieves the Spear of Destiny. He defeats the Lombard king and gets the Spear of Destiny back. And then he ends up using that spear in a few battles a little bit afterwards. But in what's important is in 800 AD, he is crowned Emperor of the Romans by Pope Leo III. And as you know, Pope Leo I, very instrumental in saving Rome. Pope Leo III, very instrumental in reestablishing Rome, or as we now call it, the Holy Roman Empire. So this event itself essentially marks the beginning of the Holy Roman Empire, and it kind of brought back the imperial tradition to like southern and central Western Europe, right? So Charlemagne's crowned. He has the Spear of Destiny supposedly with him whenever he is crowned. He has a sword. He takes off his helmet, and he is crowned by the Pope. And it's at St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, which, if you know anything about Christianity, St. Peter's Basilica is the church, the cathedral for all Christians, I would argue. The spear he got is extremely important to him after this. He is extremely protective of it. He never lets it out of his sight. He sleeps with the spear. He eats with the spear. Goes to the bathroom with the spear. It never leaves his side. And the legend goes that Charlemagne actually leads the Carolingian Empire, as it's known right now. It wasn't called the Holy Roman Empire. It's just the beginnings of it. That's why we mark him as the first Holy Roman Emperor. But it's technically the Carolingian Empire, because that's what his dynasty was called. They were Carolingians. That's like his surname, right? So if most people's last name in America is like Smith or Thomas or whatever, this guy's last name was Carolingian, so it's Charlemagne Carolingian, and that's why it's called that. But he ends up winning 42 straight battles with it, and he attributes his success to the power of the spear, reinforcing that Spear of Destiny claim, reinforcing that a Christian emperor is always going to be best able to use the spear, and that it's always going to have its way to find it's going to always try to find its way back to the hands of a Christian king who is supposed to be emperor. Well, Charlemagne's walking one day. He's like walking around the woods, or he's like riding around, and he ends up dropping the spear. And he doesn't remember where he dropped it at, so he loses it. And he is very upset about this. Well, I think a few months pass, and he just drops dead. He essentially just drops dead. So Charlemagne is dead now. And this reinforces that other legend with it, which is if you lose that spear, if you cannot reclaim that spear, or you throw it on the ground or whatever, you are going to either be defeated or die shortly thereafter. And it reinforces this kind of ethereal legend, this mythology behind the spear. And it's at this point where a lot of the legends and stuff, the myths, like, they're starting to get a little bit jumbled, just because we're talking about from 33 AD, whenever Christ is, I believe it's 33 AD, whenever Christ is stabbed in the side, to now being around like the 830s or so, whenever Charlemagne passes, or it's early 800s ADs, We're talking about almost 1,000 years of history right there, and a lot of these, spears of destiny, quote unquote, we don't know if they're actually real. But in the terms of the actual mythos itself, this is how it goes. So, after Charlemagne dies, it is used as, or it's constantly being searched for by the Holy Roman, or not the Holy Roman Church, but the Roman Catholic Church and the Holy Roman Empire, or the Carolingian Empire, whichever one you want to figure out. After his death, his sons split up his empire into 3 kingdoms, and those are West Francia, East Francia, and Lotharingia. And if you've been watching our series of Crusader Kings 3, you would know that West and East Francia and Lotharingia are all kingdoms that we've fought or been close to during our little fights that we've had, which is funny to me because we're starting to get into this part of history. So the spear is found again sometime between 814 AD and 936 AD. They don't know exactly when it's found, but they just know it's found. They retrace Charlemagne's steps. They don't know if it was a son of his. They don't really know who it is. They just know that they find it, which is where people think that it's actually a forgery and they don't know where it actually is. So this is where we start getting into, is it actually or is it not? As if it wasn't bad enough with it being found by Constantine's mother originally. But anyways, I digress. According to legend, it's now getting incorporated into the imperial regalia for the reigns of Otto I and Frederick Barbarossa. So these people are emperors later on in the Holy Roman Empire, but it's essentially very important to becoming the crown emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. If you don't possess the Spear of Destiny, the way that it goes is that you're usually not seen as the actual king of the Holy Roman Empire. You're not seen as the actual true emperor, because if you don't possess that, which is the thing that essentially made the empire, you've lost a lot of your legitimacy as the emperor. So Otto I, or Otto the Great, was crowned emperor of the Holy Roman Empire in 962 AD, and his reign was marked by efforts to consolidate power, strengthen position of the Holy Roman Empire in Europe, and the spear's association with Otto really reflects that belief that the power and importance of it as a symbol of legitimate rule is key to it as a relic. It's very, very important to the Holy Romans, or the Holy Roman, essentially the Germanic people now, Germanic and Northern Europe, or Northern, not Northern Europe, pardon me, Northern Italy. So essentially from Otto I, it gets passed down to every next king. And if you know about the Holy Roman Empire, it wasn't, initially it was a passed down title from father to son. Later on, though, to consolidate the power, they start giving away more and more freedoms to the people, the counts and the dukes and the earls of the area, and they essentially want to consolidate power. So they want to get as many people into the Holy Roman Empire as possible. So they kind of make a confederation. So essentially what that means is these people who join, they all have an equivalent amount of votes determined by how many people, how much land, and how much money they put in to the defense of the Holy Roman Empire. So essentially think of it as the Greek city-states. They fight with each other a lot. A lot of them don't like each other. They hate each other, kind of like how Athens and Sparta were. But if the country as a whole gets attacked, they will come to its aid immediately. And they put money, troops, and armor, weapons, all this other stuff into war chests, and that's how they defend the Holy Roman Empire. So it gets passed down to whoever's, and they also get elections and stuff like that, which is very interesting. They elect a king after the old one dies. So after Otto I passes away, he's consolidated a lot of the power, and what we know as like the core Holy Roman Empire, imperial states are now assembled. So that's like Saxony, Lombardy, Bohemia, Bavaria, Swabia, most of the German states that we know today, like actual states of Germany, and then some of like Czechia, northern Italy, Austria, and parts of France, as well as a little bit of Denmark, just a tad, Schleswig-Holstein, up in the north of Germany, south of Denmark. Okay, so moving on, Frederick the First, or Frederick Barbarossa. So Frederick Barbarossa is an interesting guy. He's a very key figure in medieval Europe. He was really known for his attempts to consolidate even more imperial power in the German territories, and he became really involved in campaigns to conquer Italy back, because he saw it as essentially necessary for the Holy Roman Empire to control areas of what the Romans used to control, which is where you get your Roman name. Well, the funny part of it is my teacher used to tell me this all the time in my history class, European history, AP European history, with Miss, I'm not going to say the name because I'm going to give myself away, but she always said that the Holy Roman Empire was neither holy, nor Roman, nor an empire. So we've kind of checked off the empire part of that, and why it's not really an empire, because it's a consolidation of states. It's not Roman, because they didn't really hold any part of Rome. It was only Roman in name, because they were essentially saying, we're the descendants of Rome, and we're going to take over. And the holy part is because a lot of the time, honestly, Holy Roman emperors did not actually get crowned by the Pope. They got crowned by themselves, which was viewed as very negative by the Pope, which is why the Pope and a lot of the Holy Roman emperors really butted heads later on. However, Frederick Barbarossa is not one of these guys. He loves the Pope. He loves Christianity, specifically Catholicism, because there was no other type unless you're a Waldensian or a Cathar. And Frederick Barbarossa, essentially, he wants to conquer back Roman territories, right? He wants to reestablish the Roman part of the empire. So he starts conquering northern Italy and kind of starts making his way down a little close to the papacy. The papacy's like, I don't know about this. This is kind of getting a little bit sus. So he expands the Holy Roman Empire's like territory considerably. It goes down to like central Italy by the time he's done with his rule. And I think he goes as far west as what we now know as modern day France, and it goes as far east as what we know as modern day. Oh, forgive me. Oh my goodness. I want to say Lithuania, or no, sorry, Hungary and central Poland. So he gets all this power, right? And you might be asking yourself, why is he named Barbarossa? Well, so Barbarossa is a Italian word that means red beard, because he was a redhead. He was very ginger. And it was so, like, I guess not really odd, but it was like so noticeable in him that in German he was actually known as Kaiser Rotbart, which is Emperor Redbeard, because of his very, very red facial hair and his not so red hair, but specifically his facial hair was extremely red. But he got the name Barbarossa because of his prevalence to conquer in Italy. The Italians kind of gave him a name so that they would know who they're talking about, and he's considerably known really as Emperor Redbeard throughout his entire reign, pretty much. He, like I said, loved the Pope. He loved the Catholic Church, and he saw it as tantamount to become the Holy Roman Emperor that he joined in the Third Crusade. Now, what I didn't tell you is that he's pretty old whenever he goes on this crusade. He gets crowned sometime around, I believe, like early 1100s, and he dies in 1190. So I want to say it was like I say early. I think it was like 1150 or so. I meant mid. So he rules this kingdom for 40 years, right? So what ends up happening is, if you don't know anything about the Third Crusade, it's a very big cluster of a mess. First Crusade was very successful. Second Crusade not as successful. The Third Crusade is a horrible mess. People are fighting between each other. The kings of France and England are at each other's throats because of the 100 Years' War that's going on. There is, or not the 100 Years' War, but because of wars that had been going on between them. Richard the Lionheart being the king of England. I forget. I believe it's John the First, the king of France, or Philip the First. I can't remember what the name of his. But Frederick Barbarossa is the central figure, and he is known as one of the great conquerors of the world at this time. And people really, really look up to him. All European kings have a great opinion of Frederick Barbarossa. He is extremely important to the European cause and the Christian cause on this crusade. So he has an army of something crazy. I can't remember, 100,000 men or something, or 10,000 men. It's a big army for the time. I mean, it's humongous. I don't think it was 100,000. I think it was probably 10, 20,000 men. But I mean, it's really big comparatively speaking to other European kingdoms. So he starts marching his troops from Germany to Turkey. They get to Turkey, they go through, and he gets into Turkey. What he doesn't realize is that Eastern Turkey is a giant desert that doesn't have a lot of rivers, and he doesn't really stop for supplies because he wants to get to the Holy Land. He wants to start conquering. He wants to take back the stuff. So he's marching in southern. He's marching towards southern Turkey for some reason. I think that's the way that they followed. It was a part of the road, and he gets to the Salif River, or just before the Salif River, and it's said in legend that he actually either loses the spear or has the spear stolen from him somehow, and he is very angry about this, and he searches for days trying to find it. And he's so distraught that he ends up he's like, look, we're going to have to go, because if I don't go, the crusade is doomed, because all these other people are fighting between each other. So he starts marching towards southern Turkey, and he gets to the Salif River, which is now known as the Göksuk River. And he is famished, dehydrated. There's been no water for a while, at least according to what I've studied on this. There's barely any water for him to get. So him and all of his people, specifically him, he goes barreling down to this river, right? He's got all of his stuff on. He's got a crown on. He's got a helmet. He's got his sword. He's got his armor. He's got all types of stuff, right? And he gets down to this river, and he ends up essentially dropping down to his knees and starts drinking in this river. And he ends up going deeper and deeper into it in his panic of how thirsty he is. So he gets into essentially the very not super deep part of it, but he stands up and he falls over into the river. And he can't get up. He's dehydrated. He's extremely old by this point. I think he's in his 70s. Or maybe 80s. 70s. He's definitely 70. I think he's 70. Yeah, I believe. Somewhere around 70. So he falls in this river, right? And he can't get up. That armor's heavy. He's old. And he's dehydrated. His muscles aren't working. He can't do anything. And his troops are not very close to him, because they don't know what's going on. So they end up looking for him, and they realize he's not coming up out of the water. He ends up dying via drowning, which is extremely detrimental to the crusade. So a huge part of his forces, now that the emperor is dead, huge number of them end up going back to Europe, so that they can kind of protect their cities from because he was the guy who held everyone together. He didn't allow fighting a lot in the Holy Roman Empire. So a lot of his troops go back so that they can defend their homeland because they know that people are going to start attacking them soon if they don't. And his knights end up going through with the crusade. A lot of them end up dying. And the ones who come back, the Third Crusade was not very successful. It had a lot of bad stuff happen in it. I don't want to touch on it just now because I want to do a crusade video later on. But a lot of people actually speculate that if he had not died, European Christians actually would have reclaimed Jerusalem from Saladin, who was the guy who ran that area at the time. And they actually probably would have taken a lot more than they did in the First Crusade because of the size of the armies and the tactical genius of the people that were fighting. Essentially what happens is Richard the Lionheart goes on, and I think he dies during the Crusades, or he dies on his way back. And his troops are like very, very awful in the desert fighting. And then the French are the same way, but their king lives. And it's a whole mess for the Europeans. They get absolutely demolished. So, ends up, you know, they don't know where the spears went. They don't know where Spear of Destiny's gone. They lose their emperor. They lose the thing that crowns their emperors. And they're kind of just, I would just say, fucked at this point in terms of the Holy Roman Empire. They have lost two of their biggest symbols of who they are. Well, this is when a little-known family from a little-known part of Austria comes in. And they are called the Habsburgs. And the Habsburgs, supposedly, according to legend, come into possession of the spear in the early 12th century, or early 13th century. So, if the legends are true, a lot of people don't know if they're actually true. But a lot of people speculate that a Habsburg soldier, because the Habsburgs were very not big fans of Frederick Barbarossa, apparently. It's said that they actually stole the spear and held it until they could consolidate power, and then pass it off as them being the people who found it, and then establish their figureheads and their people in power. So they come back, and probably like 20, 30 years after Barbarossa dies, they're like, guys, we sent an expedition over to where Barbarossa lost the thing, and we actually found it. We found the spear, guys. Isn't that great? We found the spear, guys. Oh my god. How could we ever have found it? If you know anything about the Habsburgs, they are shady people. They're very shady and very inbred. That chin is not an overstatement. That's what their chins look like, because they were so inbred that their chins, they have an actual name for it. It's called the Habsburg chin, because they were so intermingled and intermixed that their chins elongated. So it's they end up giving it back to the Holy Roman Empire. They actually received this huge award from the sitting Holy Roman Emperor, and his rule is not the greatest, but they end up passing. They end up. I think it was like the temporary guy in between whenever they were going to regain the control. They establish a guy named Frederick II as the Holy Roman Empire, or the Holy Roman Emperor. So Frederick II is, I believe, I can't remember if he's somehow very, very far related to Frederick Barbarossa, but he's also related to the Habsburgs somehow, and they don't really, I can't really recall how, because European lines of succession are ridiculous, but Frederick's coronation is in 1220, not 1215. He's born, or he's not born in 1215, but he is, he's crowned a German coronation in 1212, but he is actually given a papal coronation in 1220. So the Pope actually crowns him with the, what do you call it? like the Holy Roman Emperor's special. They have like a special crown that they give them. It's the imperial crown. I can't remember what it's actually called. I think it's called like Hohenstaufen, or that might be the dynasty that established it. But essentially, he ends up getting all types of like kudos because they found the spear and this, that, and the other. And the Habsburgs really use him for their own political gain. Even though he's a Hohenstaufen, they kind of like play tricks with him, and like he doesn't have a kid, and he ends up dying. So the Habsburgs assume control of a large part of the Holy Roman Empire for quite a bit of time, and then they kind of break off after the Confederation of Germany, and that's later on. But they end up just putting it on display. Like they put the spear on display in Vienna from the 13th century until the early 20th century, like right before World War One, or during World War One, and it's only used for the coronation of new emperors, and that's from the 13th century for Frederick II's the first guy, and then after that, it's all the way up till the fall of the Holy Roman Empire. So they control considerable power, considering they own the biggest piece of regalia that you can own for the Holy Roman Emperor, I would argue, aside from his crown. Next page. All right, so the Habsburgs, again, the spear was actually hidden during the Napoleonic Wars because they feared that Napoleon would try to take it in order to crown himself as the emperor, the Holy Roman Emperor. He ended up obviously getting defeated, and they brought it back out of hiding. Funnily enough, there is a story, and I did not write about this, but there is a story. I'm not sure how familiar you all are with the Ottoman Empire, but the Ottomans, they came dangerously close to defeating all of Europe at one point, and it was I believe it was 1529. Or it might have been earlier than that. It might have been the 1475 one. There's a thing called the Siege of Vienna, and the Siege of Vienna, it's 1485. That's what it is. So Frederick III. Oh wait, I'm sorry. No, that's not right. That's the kingdom. That's Hungary and Holy Roman Empire. So the Siege of Vienna rather is 1529. So this is the Ottomans bring like this humongous 100,000 men army up to Vienna. They've conquered all of the Balkans pretty much. They've conquered a lot of Eastern Europe. They have the entirety of the Middle East. They are marching up. The guy's name is Suleiman the Magnificent. He brings this humongous crowd of soldiers to fight at Vienna, which is in the Holy Roman Empire, but it's obviously controlled by the Habsburgs. And the Habsburgs reach out to everybody they possibly can to help them out, and no one wants to help them. So the Habsburgs are stuck essentially with some pretty weak allies at first. And then they end up getting a few reinforcements later on. But the big one that is said to have happened is that in Vienna, they had passed the Spear of Destiny to the king of, I want to say, Poland. And the king of Poland, if you don't know, at the time, Poland was very famous for its cavalry. Specifically, there's a thing called the Winged Hussars, which are heavy cavalry units that are very decked out in plate mail, including the horses, and they have giant wings off the back of them. Supposedly, the king, during his charge into the... this is one of the people that helped them out later on. As the Austro-Hungarians, or not the Austro-Hungarians, but the Austrians are getting surrounded, there's two armies that pop up. There's the Winged Hussars in Poland, and there's another army that comes up, and I cannot remember who for the life of me who the other one was. But they end up making this giant cavalry charge at the Ottomans, and they push them out with the cavalry charge. And it's said, supposedly, that during this cavalry charge, the King of Poland had the Spear of Destiny with him whenever he went on the charge. I'm not sure if that's actually true, or even if that's the right battle, if I'm being quite honest, but supposedly that's what happened. And that is a really cool tale to talk about whenever you're talking about the... actually, you know what? I'm not even talking about the right one. That was later on. That was in 1683. I'm a dummy. That was the Holy League. Yep, Polish-Lithuania. Yeah, I'm dumb. Sorry about that, guys. Wrong time period. Everyone makes mistakes. 1683, that's what happened. Supposedly the Holy Lance, the Spear of Destiny, Lance of Longinus, is used by that Polish king, and on that cavalry charge, he ends up pushing out lots and lots and lots of the Ottoman Empire troops, and they end up fleeing back, and they never attack Europe again. And it's seen as like the definitive moment that we saved, quote unquote, we saved Europe from being invaded by the Ottoman Empire. So that is a fun little side story in between whenever they put it on display and whenever we get it back. But we already talked about the Napoleonic Wars. So after the Holy Roman Empire falls, it comes in possession of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. They establish a new country, essentially, after the fall of the Holy Roman Empire and the rise of Prussia and all these other nations that kind of splinter. Holy Roman Empire falls apart. And they are in possession of the spear, from 1867, whenever it's established, until 1919. And the spear just disappears during World War I. They don't know what happens to it. It's presumed that it was hidden by the Austro-Hungarians and the Habsburgs, and then remnants of the Habsburgs pushed it back out after the war, but it doesn't reappear until after the war in like the 1920s. That's like the next time it's seen on display in Vienna. And funnily enough, from the 13th century until this time, it's still at the Hofburg Palace in Vienna. So after the war, the Holy Roman Empire falls apart already, and now the Austro-Hungarian Empire, because of the Treaty of Versailles, is no longer a country, so they split up into like a bunch of different states. And then we have the rise of Nazi Germany and Hitler, and Hitler was absolutely obsessed with the spear. It gained a lot of notoriety during World War II, whenever Adolf Hitler reportedly sought it for its mystical powers. And if you know anything about the Nazi Party, they were obsessed with like mythological weapons and places. They were looking for like Shangri-La and Agartha, and what's the other one? The city under the sea. Oh my goodness, what is the name? I can't even remember. Damn, what is the name of that stupid underwater city everyone talks about from the Greeks up until now? My God, I can't think today, guys. From then until now, what is the name of that stupid place? Underwater city. It sunk into the sea. Not Neptune, not Poseidon. Those are Greek gods and Roman gods. Atlantis, that's the one. Oh my God, I can't even think. Jesus Christ, my brain doesn't work. Atlantis. So they were seeking all types of like weird stuff like this. So essentially, there's this thing that happens, and I believe it's like 1937 or 38. It's called the Anschluss, which is the annexation of Austria by the German Empire, or not the German Empire, but by the German Reich. And essentially Hitler goes to Vienna, looks at that Spear of Destiny, and just says, bring that shit back to Berlin right now. And he takes it back to Berlin, and they don't know really what he did with it. He kind of just had it. Some people say he didn't even take it to Berlin. Some say that it was just in Austria, in Vienna, at the place. But there's differing accounts of that. They don't really know. All they do know is that it disappeared for a time and then it reappeared in like 1946. So it pops back up magically. And that's pretty much the end of its history after that. And we get into modern day. It's achieved a legendary status over time, obviously being the culmination of the rise and falls of many empires, many kings, and legendary characters in not just Christian history, but in history in general. It essentially determined the fate of Europe, if you believe the legends or any of the mythology behind it. And today, it's still on display, even till this day, at the Hofburg Palace in Vienna, Austria. So if you want to go check it out and you're in Europe, or if you're an American who's going to Austria soon, highly recommend it. It's there on the left, along with some of the other things. I can't remember what these other two things are. I want to say this is nails. I don't know what this is. This looks like some sort of cross for the Holy Roman Empire, though. Or actually, that looks like the German cross. So that might be... Yeah, I think that's for crowning the king. Anyways, we don't really know if this is the actual real one, though. So I'm just going to be quite honest with you guys. There is legends abound about this. I find it very unlikely that after some of these people drop it in the woods or they lose it, that they re-find it magically. Now, it could be that this is the original from the time of Constantine, although I don't think so. But if you believe the stories to be true, this is the same lance that stabbed Jesus. This is a holy relic, and it's a very important piece of Christian history. So if you are very interested in that, if you're a Christian, if you're a Catholic specifically, highly recommend going to see it. I wish I would have gotten to see it whenever I was in Europe earlier this year. Unfortunately, I didn't get to make it down to Vienna. But I think that would be really, really cool. The other part of this is we don't know if this is real. As I said before, it could have been lost after Jesus' crucifixion. It could have been lost after Charlemagne dropped it. It could have been lost in between Justinian and Otto the First. It could have been lost after Constantine even got it. We don't know. But I like to think I know that it's probably unlikely that it's the real one, but I think there's a little bit of intrigue and a little bit of interesting stuff about thinking and believing that it's actually the real one, because that relic is so important to so many millions of people, billions of people even if you take out the religious context, it's hundreds of millions of people's lives have been changed if you believe the stories behind it. Very interesting relic. Super glad I got to cover it today. I appreciate you all for listening to my blabble. Here are my sources. The Holy Lance, Spear of Destiny by Trevor Ravenscroft. Spear of Destiny, a historical and symbolic analysis by Michael W. Miller. The Lost Treasure of the Knights Templar, The Secret of the Spear of Destiny by Stephen Sora. Historical accounts would be The History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire by Edward Gibbon. The Holy Roman Empire, 1,000 Years of History in 1,000 Years of Europe's History by Peter H. Wilson. Articles in Encyclopedia Britannica, articles on Holy Roman Empire and Charlemagne. Spear of Destiny, Encyclopedia of Occultism and Parapsychology. Online resources, History Channel's website, British Museum, Library of Congress, and general reference is The Secret of the Spear of Destiny by Jean-Marc Decote. And these descriptions were made by ChatGPT because I did have it make a sources cited page for me. But these are real sources that I actually used. So do not believe that I just typed this into ChatGPT. These are actually sources that I used. And I thank you all very much for that. I hope you enjoyed our little history lesson. I think that was kind of cool. So, anyways, what do you guys think? Did you guys enjoy the lesson? I like talking about it. I like European history, especially like that time of European history, because not a lot of people cover it. And this was a super interesting little tidbit to me, because I really do enjoy this crap, man. I don't know why. Maybe it's just the way my brain operates, but something about a little mystery in your life, especially something like this, that could affect so many people, is just so interesting. But Thanks for telling the story about the legendary spear. Yeah, of course. Yeah, no problem. I think it's an interesting little bit of history or legend, whichever one you determine. And I did not read any chats, so I'm going to go back and read through some of these. Let's see. What? I think the last one I read was Classic Balkans, but I don't think I read anything. The Poker at Predestination. Going on a pilgrimage right now, BRB. Thank you, barbarians deserved. Why are the Huns so cool? Are the Huns cool? They kind of got beat up really hard by the Mongols, and then they disappeared. Going to Balkans Classic Extent. Yeah, I already said that one. Brother just threw the legendary item away because it wasn't for his class. Literally. Bro said, I need a staff, not a spear. Thank you very much. Actually, I need a bow. Can I get a bow and arrow, please? I need a legendary bow, not a legendary staff. Or spear, rather. Lotharangia is cool. Operation Barbarossa. That is what that is named after. Correct. The Fatal Sippies. At least the Fourth Crusade was awesome. So true. Are Habsburgs the original Giga Chads? No, definitely not. They're the original Alabamians, I would argue. Someone redeemed Hydrate too many times. So true. Barbarossa said, let me... Hold my beer. I need to drink this water. I just drank water, too. I'm going to end up like him. The Flying Hussars. Yeah, dude. That's crazy. The Winged Hussars are such an interesting little like tidbit in history. Those guys are so incredibly based. I think it's so cool to imagine like what, I don't know, like even 5,000 of those guys riding on horseback in this heavy ass plate armor with these giant lances. Can you imagine that coming at you at like, I don't know, 20 miles an hour? Horseback, giant horses too, like war horses, not normal horses, like a thoroughbred. I'm talking big boys, talking Clydesdales size horses. That's how big these things were, dude. It's insane. But yeah, dude, I can't even imagine the Winged Hussars coming through. Oh, that must have been so cool. Must have been very cool. Okay, well, we actually took a lot of time. I'm glad that got spaced out so much. I'm hoping that I can get some feedback on that one. I think that one was a little bit less heavy on the reading and more heavy on the listening, which is nice because I think you guys can appreciate the actual, I guess, the presentation a little bit more. But I also like the app, so maybe it wasn't your style. Let me know, please. Yeah, man. Great story. I love it. So cool. Shout out to History Channel for showing off that video, as well as the Smithsonian Channel. I wanted to touch a little bit more on the occult stuff with the Nazis and the spear, but there wasn't really... I didn't read that full book, like I said. I only read a snippet of it, which is why I ordered it, but then I realized I wasn't going to get here in time, so I was like, damn, okay. I'm just going to go off the snippet that I have, so I think it was good. Thank you, Mad Lad. Appreciate it. Base mod, thank you. But the history lesson, I think, went well. So that's good. We got about 3 minutes or so. I said I was going to do a longer one tonight, but it actually took a lot out of me to do all that. I don't know if I'm going to do a long one tonight. I might do a long one Saturday, actually. That might be what I do. It might be a better idea, actually. But we'll let you guys determine. What do you guys want me to cover next? I feel like I do a lot of like European history. Maybe I should go with, well, I did the Philippines at first, but there were Spaniards, which is technically European history. But it's Asian. Maybe I should do African history or North American history, something like that. I might try, maybe I'll do Simone Bolivar. I don't know, I feel like I cover war too much too. That's why I kind of switched to the spear, but then the spear is like a spear for war, so maybe not. Anyways, good little run there, I think, all in all. So I think it's getting a little bit late too. I got work tomorrow. Let's do this. On Saturday, I'll do a little bit of a longer stream. I'm not going to do the long one tonight. We got about 3 minutes, 2 minutes or so. So let's pick a person to raid. and we will go from there. And I appreciate you all watching my senseless babble for a whole 2 hours today. I know it was not the most interesting topic, or at least I thought it was interesting, but maybe other people have different opinions. That's okay. But like I said, if you guys find anything that I said, obviously like that Vienna, like Siege of Vienna or whatever, if I say something else like that, dude, just call me out on it. Because honestly, there's so many, especially for European history, there's so many like, or just history of the world. There's so many like treaties of Versailles and treaties of Paris and treaties of whatever and sieges of certain towns, because European history goes back thousands of years. It's so easy to get lost into which war you're talking about. And I literally just remembered that Spear of Destiny thing at the last second. So please forgive me for spouting absolute drivel. But we will find a person to go and raid real quick. Let me go down here. Why am I not able to go to my chat? You don't have enough history knowledge to call me out. Oh, dude, come on now. Surely you have some. That's why I do these streams. Honestly, that is why I like doing these streams, though. I like doing the streams because I know a lot of people either don't find history super interesting, or if they do find history interesting, a lot of people maybe get stuck in like this loop where they feel like they can't really understand it, I guess. Which I don't. It's not anything negative towards people who can't understand history. It's just like I think that they, I think a lot of times people don't get it because they don't have a very good teacher. So whenever they start learning it as a child, they grow up despising history, and they're like, I don't understand. Why do I would ever use this? I don't get it. And then so if they do that, and then you end up, I don't know, for some reason, coming back to history, you kind of lose out on your interest of it, right? There's not as much of a drive for people to come back in and kind of be like, I'm gonna relearn history or whatever. So, okay, Kofi. I think Kofi. Yeah, Kofi seems like. Well, is Kofi streaming yet?
Low. Find energy now.
Oh, shit. Is that Neo? What the fuck? Oh, I'm gonna add. Duh. Okay. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna raid Kofi. Kofi. We're gonna do that. So we're gonna raid her. We're going to post the raid message in just a moment. If I can. Where did my raid message go? Oh, he's gonna slash raid or exclamation point raid on me. Ah, there we go. Okay, sweet. Thanks. Shout out to you, Mad Ladison. All right, post that in there, and I will boom. Okay, sweet. Well, we're going to go raid Kofi. I think it should be pretty decent for you guys to go chill with them for a bit. I don't know what they're going to be playing. So, looks like, oh, it's Zenless Zero. Okay, sweet. Triple Z. All right, so we're going to go raid them. Spam that message whenever you get in there, guys. I appreciate everybody coming by and stopping today. Thank you for listening to my absolutely wondiferous history lesson. If you have any clips of the channel that you want to share, please go ahead and do so. If you did, let me know, and I'll try to give you a shout out on Twitter or whatever. Speaking of Twitter, if you don't follow me on there, please do, because it's very, very, very important to making the channel grow. Also got a YouTube channel. All of those are linked in my channel description. Please give me a follow on both of those, or a subscribe on YouTube, whichever one. And not only that, we are 11 people away from the Path to Affiliate. We got a lot of big time content coming soon, I hope. And yeah, guys, I appreciate it again. All your support coming in, watching me. It really means the world. I want to keep making kind of interesting history videos, but if you guys have any feedback for me, if I'm too monotone, if you don't like the subjects, if you think I need to do it a different way, please let me know. I really would appreciate it. There's a suggestion box below. If you have a suggestion, please type in that. Type away. Will not hurt my feelings. Whatever you put on there, just let me know. And again, guys, I appreciate it. And we will catch you on Saturday for an extra long stream. I love you all. I'm going to start the raid now. But I love you all. Kiss, kiss. Please, please remember me fondly after the raid. And yeah, guys, we'll chat with you on Saturday. Love you guys again. And yeah, peace.
Maxforgevt, thank you for the raid. Welcome. How's your stream? 3 billion raiders. Woo! Yeah, thank you for the raid. If I can get a mod shot Max, that would be awesome. Thank you. How's your game? If you're chatting, etc. It's good. I'm glad. Welcome. If you need to go get a drink of water or go to the bathroom or work, feel free to. Hope everything's been going lovely for you today or this evening, depending on where you are and all that.
I heard about them on a TV show. Wait, so the missing children were machines? Exactly.